All right, welcome everybody to the Jewish Life Cycles class. This is class episode number 13, and the subject today is the engagement and the chuppah, God willing. So we'll get some of the custom. Sorry.
In the oven.
Okay, we'll get some of the customs and traditions of the chuppah, and we'll see how that goes. First of all, just regarding shidduchim that we discussed last week, I wanted to mention, but I couldn't remember the name. And then I remembered the name, and then I got lost looking at their website. The back page of, I think it's Mishpacha magazine, one of them has this series called The Kichels. And many of the episodes of the Kichels comics have to do with the craziness that goes on in the shidduch world. And it's one of the only times that a say mainstream Orthodox printed material sort of is critical of something in the Orthodox world on a regular basis. So it's rather good, very well written. And then because I remembered the name, the Kichels, I looked it up, and it turns out there's a whole website. I think it's thekichels.com. And so you can go and enjoy and read a lot of funny comics written by these brilliant ladies. All right. Anyhow, the engagement. Let's begin by telling you that in days of yore, and I'm talking about like 2,000 years ago, when somebody got engaged, it wasn't a small thing. It was basically marriage. Engagement meant you signed documents, you promised to each other. It's a done deal. And we had other names for these things. There's the kiddushin and the nisuyin, and these are different stages in marriage that we nowadays do all at once at the wedding itself. And I'll explain when we get to it. But what we have nowadays as the engagement party, whether you call it a vort or you call it a l'chaim, and by the way, the only difference is, as far as I know, the only real difference is what culture you come from, whether it's a Hasidic culture or a non-Hasidic culture. Sephardim are kind of stuck. They either don't do it at all, or which nowadays they do. They basically call it a l'chaim, or they might even call it a vort. I don't know. Or just an engagement party. It doesn't mean anything halachically, which means that if for whatever reason it doesn't work out after the engagement, there's absolutely no problem breaking it off. What do I mean? I mean the bride, the bride to be, who is no longer a bride, who's now ex-engaged, right? So she can now marry a Kohen later on in life. She's not considered to have lost her virginal status, or whatever you want to call it, in any way, which is different than what it used to be. That's actually one of the problems why that changed, is because when it used to be part of the process of the wedding, and it was 6 months in between the two parts of the wedding, it could be that if something happens that breaks it off, or God forbid one of them die, then there could be legal ramifications afterwards, which would make them invalid for marrying, would make her definitely invalid to marry Cohen, and other kinds of consequences that we don't need to talk about right now. The point is that changed, and so engagement parties nowadays have absolutely no rules. There's no law about them at all. You don't even have to have them, but we do. So let's talk about them real quick. What I've seen at engagement parties usually is that there's usually one or two of them, and they usually either occur in, well, that's interesting. Give me one moment. Sorry about that. Regardless of how it actually occurs, it usually happens in either both the town where the Katan is, assuming they're living in different towns, and in the town of the Kala, or just in the town where the Kala lives. either way, the point is really for the community, the community to experience, to visit, to meet everybody who's there, right? To meet the incoming family, because that's what's happening when people get married. Two people who are otherwise, who never actually knew each other very well, definitely two families that didn't necessarily know each other very well, are now going to be smacked together. And there's going to be maybe some friction and maybe some differences and different cultures and different ideas and all kinds of different levels of education. Even forget about Judaism for a moment. Just like my big fat Greek wedding kind of thing. We have completely different cultures mixing in together, different ideas about where people should live, how people should eat, everything, etiquette. Everything is different in lots of different cultures, and there are too many cultures in the world to even go into it. One moment. Let me see if that helps things. That looks a little bit better. Okay. I look a little fuzzy, and now I look a little less fuzzy. All right. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a rabbi. All right. So that's what you get. I mean, it's normal and it's natural, and that's how it happens. Of course, throughout Jewish history, that's been different. Usually, used to be, for example, in Europe, right? In the shtetl, people married people in the shtetl. They didn't meet people from outside the shtetl. How are they supposed to do that? Right. So they obviously they in-married within a very closely knit group where everybody already knew each other, and so the engagement party was just basically a thanks to Hashem for allowing these two people to get married. It was basically a Sudat mitzvah. It's not even a Suda. It's not an official Suda. You don't have to have bread. I don't remember the last time I've been to an engagement party that had bread. There's usually candies and cookies and things like that. Usually something to drink. That's why it's often called a l'chaim. And there's usually a Devar Torah, usually from the Katan, and that's why it's called a vort, which is Yiddish for word. So the Katan is supposed to, the groom, the prospective groom who just got engaged, right, is supposed to say a few words. Now, it used to be, now this isn't even so long ago, in the very, very early days of Jewish involvement and the internet, when somebody got engaged, it was, they would post their picture of their engagement on this website called Only Simchas. I don't know if that still exists. I don't know. I don't remember the last time I've seen anything from there. But, and these.
Oh, yeah, Simcha Spot, right?
Sorry?
It's there. Simcha Spot?
No, Only Simchas it's called.
The two then. Huh?
Okay, I don't know. Anyway, it used to be called, there used to be a website, I don't know if it still exists, it's called Only Simchas, and primarily the whole point of the website was to advertise Simchas. So there would be like this picture of the engaged couple, usually an awkward picture where they don't know how close together they're supposed to stand. And usually the picture's supposed to somehow capture the ring. Yeah, that's important because, how can you be engaged without a ring? And sometimes it's, in some romantic location, like, the living room. All right. So whatever the case may be, all kinds of crazy ideas come up. And that's how we used to do it, back in the day, a whole, like, 10, 15 years ago. Nowadays, I don't even know what they do. There's no one website to post these things on. I want to say our community, which is what's called an out-of-town community. By the way, in the last few days, I found out how out of town we really are. just in case I didn't know. Now I'm being reminded on a constant basis. When I tell people our bigger shuls in San Diego have 40 families, they're like, the bigger shul. And so anyway, regardless, not important. The important thing is that people do get engaged even in small towns, and so out of town places too. And I prefer out of town places, to tell you the truth. But anyway, so okay, so now they're engaged, and there are pictures on Simcha Spot or only simchas are on Facebook or wherever the pictures posted. People are usually invited. We didn't really talk too much about this, but many of you already know that when it comes to simchas, including the Brit Milah that we talked about all the way back when there's a simcha, you shouldn't really invite people, not officially. Right? You shouldn't say please come to this, because if they say no, they're passing over a mitzvah. You don't want to do that. You don't want to give them that that possibility. You don't want to put that stumbling block in front of them. So you don't ask them to come. You say it in other words. So, like, for example, the most common phrase is something to the effect of, "We request the presence of your company." So that's not a question like, "Are you coming?" which they have to say yes or no to. Instead, we request that you come, and then you don't have to respond to that, and then not come if you can't, or come if you want to. Either way, it's not a invitation per se. We're just requesting that you could come. We're letting you know. We're informing you of this simcha. That's another way to phrase it. Did you have a question? I thought I heard a question. Okay, I hear things sometimes. All right. So that's that. Now, at the actual engagement party, like I said, the Katan is supposed to give what's called a vort, or a Devar Torah. The custom has become, over the last, I don't know, probably 100 years or less, there is a custom in a lot of yeshivish communities to interrupt the Katan when he gets up to speak. How do we interrupt him? He starts saying, first of all, I'd like to say, and you say, "Oh, Yehuda," and you start singing, and right when he's just started talking, then eventually, the music calms down, and he starts. What I was trying to say was, and he started up another song. Okay, whatever. You wouldn't sing a sukkah song, but whatever. You get the point. You interrupt with songs, and by doing that, you're interrupting. He's not able to say his Devar Torah fully. Eventually, you let him probably finish. But the point is, why do we do that? So it's been explained that the reason for this custom is to teach him patience, because that's one of the things we want in a Chatan. We want a person, we want a man, a real man, knows how to be patient and wait and not be in such a hurry, and not have to have his way all the time, and to be able to give a little bit, to forgive and give are parts of the successful marriage. So that being said, that's the custom, is to interrupt during the singing, and those are the basic customs of the engagement. Now, I mentioned before that there is, of course, the famous engagement ring. That is not a Jewish thing at all. I want to point that out. But it's pretty much adopted by us. There's nothing religious per se about it, and it's usually a diamond ring. It means, like, people try to read symbols into it because we do it, but the fact is, it doesn't really mean anything. There's no reason why it has to be a diamond. It's not because we like poor African children to be slaves, or or soldiers in Africa, whatever it is. So that's not the point of having a diamond ring. It's not because we're looking for places where minds can cave in on people. The point is that it should be something pretty, something the bride will like, obviously, and of course, women like diamonds, typically. Interestingly enough, as some of you know, there are diamonds that have been manufactured in factories, cubic zirconium, which for some reason, even though they might be as beautiful as diamonds, for some reason they're definitely not as expensive as diamonds, and they're usually thought of as cheap and replicas, whereas really they're just scientifically made and lab made instead of found in nature and then made. By the way, diamonds are made, they're cut, They're not. They don't come out. You don't go into a mine and like pick at a wall and then like little diamonds fall in and you just put them into rings. You actually have to like cut them, and there's a whole process to this, which is very complicated and expensive, which is why diamonds are so expensive. And there's all kinds of ways to measure the worth of a diamond. It's weight and its shine and its glare and its perfection. And there's like basically I think there's 4 things, but I'm not really an expert in that. I learned about this just a couple of weeks before my engagement. That's the first and last I ever heard about this, and it's the last I ever want to hear about it. Anyway, so that's again, but the important thing is there's no symbolism to it. There's no religious significance. There's no Kabbalah behind, oh, the diamond. It means absolutely nothing in terms of Jewish law and practice. And if for whatever reason the groom cannot afford a diamond ring and the bride is okay accepting a cubic zirconium or a plain gold ring or a silver ring or anything else kind of ring as her engagement gift, an earring, a necklace, whatever she wants, if that's what they agreed on, that can be their engagement, and she does not have to have an engagement ring. There's no halacha of engagement rings. Does that make sense? Ooh. Okay. Yes. Oh, no. Okay. Let's
no, we get it.
Okay. All right. Let's go on then. Okay. So we've gotten engaged. There's a whole to do. One moment. Timing is everything, Not everybody knows what time is what anymore. What's going on here? All right, sorry. Okay, so then comes the wedding, and of course, I promised myself I wouldn't go into a whole rant about this, so I won't. But weddings are very expensive. They're much more expensive than they need to be. I hope some people learned that lesson in the last few years with COVID, when we've had very simple weddings in people's backyards with just a minion and the family and the basics. And that's what we're going to be learning about, the basics. The 15-piece band. Oh, the band by the Chuppa has to be different than the band at the dance, and the huge dance floor with the this and that, the lights, the smoke, Okay. I said I wouldn't rant on it. I'm not gonna rant. I promised myself. Bad rap. All right. So, all right. You don't need most of the stuff that people do. In fact, in some ways, that takes away from the wedding. I'm still a little bit upset at the photographers at my wedding because I think they got in the way a lot, because like I had to like walk around them to go get to the chuppah, and and they're in the pictures, and the photographers in the video, the videographers in the pictures, because they didn't really account for each other. Anyway, so whatever the case may be, I'm not a big fan of those things. And I think a lot of that's changing. Definitely the video part, I've noticed is changing, which is good, because think about it. Who watches the video? Like, ever? Right. Okay. Literally in my entire married life, I think as a family, we sat down to watch our wedding video once. And I don't remember what we must have been drinking or what was in the water that day that made us want to do that. It was a bad idea. It just anyway, it's as beautiful as a wedding as it was. It does not need to be captured in video. It should be captured here. It should be remembered. And video doesn't always do it justice anyway. Some pictures here and there. That's probably all you need.
I know that I think some people will like watch their video on their anniversary or something.
Okay, why?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just
okay.
trying.
I know a person. Okay, I promise not to rant about these sorts of things, but I know a person who watches her wedding video pretty regularly. she is the most depressed person I know. She watches the video to look at how her dreams have fallen apart. Yeah, this is the marriage I wanted to have, that kind of thing. She watches her wedding video regularly. I don't think that's a good thing. That huge expense and everything else, literally the price that my in-laws and some a little bit me, what we paid for the wedding altogether was worth several months of rent. It would have been a lot more helpful in that regard than that beautiful long night with 2 bands and a lot of food that we didn't eat. Anyway, so let's
Rabbi, I know people who second mortgage their house to make an
pay
expensive
for a wedding.
wedding.
Mhm,
Yes,
mhm.
for a wedding.
Yeah. Is
Yes.
that crazy or what?
Yes.
I want the hotter. It's not hot enough.
What was that, Sandra? Oh,
What?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm not muted?
Not anymore.
No.
I'll mute you. Don't worry. Okay, so it happens. So I thought Sandra was going to jump in to tell us how inexpensive Lakewood weddings are, and it's true. The people, the certain communities. I know Cleveland and Lakewood and some other from communities. They basically the rabbis there got together and said, we're going to limit how much you can pay for a wedding. Doesn't matter how rich you are, you can't have too expensive of a wedding. You have like 2 choice of bands, either this guy on a guitar and a piano, or this guy on a drum and a guitar, and that's it. And no more flowers. We used to, they paid $2,000 for the flowers at my wedding. I think maybe more. I don't know. It was incredible. And in Lakewood and in Cleveland nowadays, as far as I know, you pay a certain amount and you get free flowers, which are reusable because they're not real, right? So every wedding has the same flowers. Oh, I can't have my own unique bouquet. I've always dreamed of lilacs. I don't care what you dreamed of your whole life. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have a lilac wedding. Okay. You can lie to people that it was lilacs.
I don't know in Lakewood
Yeah.
if they interfere with, if the rabbis paskin on the cost of a wedding.
I'm pretty sure they do. That's why a lot of people get, even in San Diego, there's as you probably know, there are families in San Diego who have weddings in Lakewood. That's one of the reasons. It's
Right.
much more
But
cost effective.
I do know that it's definitely unacceptable to spend more money on a bar mitzvah. And therefore, the children who are bar mitzvah do not have bar mitzvahs outside the home.
Right.
They have, the boys have their bar mitzvah in the school,
Mhm.
where all of his classmates attend a breakfast.
Right.
That's what they do.
And
But
they
they're
have something
not
in the
allowed
shul.
to have a big bar mitzvah in a hall.
Right. Good. That's wonderful. Oh yeah, they definitely, the rabbis also chimed in on weddings.
Oh, yeah.
And for the same reason, they became hugely ostentatious and a huge competition, keeping along with the Joneses, with the Schwartzes. Their chuppah was 50 miles wide. We have to make ours 55 miles wide. That's not how it's supposed to be. That definitely takes away from it. And so what we'll be learning about today are the basics, what a wedding has to have, what you would expect, and not necessarily what people do or want to do. Let's start with, we're going to go in order of, there's a book called Ohel Aryeh, which is a halachic book written by Rav Label Katz. And it's mostly about the laws of family purity. But he starts out, the first few chapters are the laws of weddings, the laws of marriages, and he goes through some of the customs. In fact, he mentions quite a few more customs than most would. and he goes into quite some detail. So we're just going to go through some of these customs. First of all, obviously, the first thing to do is to pick a wedding date. Now, it's ideal. There are certain writers, certain rabbis over the years, the Steichemer among them, who wrote that it's ideal to have a wedding when there's a full moon. Right? So you basically have a 3-day window every month when you can have a full moon, the 14th, 15th, and 16th of every Jewish month. It's not always obviously possible to have a wedding on those days because sometimes those are holidays, right? You can't have a wedding on Pesach. You can't have a wedding on what's another 15th on Sukkot, right? So but if it works out time-wise, that's ideal. It's also ideal, believe it or not, there's different opinions on this, but there are some people who say it's ideal to have the wedding under the sky, so it should be outdoors, and ideally under the stars. Why? Because there's a pasuk in Bereshit that says that your children should be as plentiful as the stars. So you want to have like an allusion to that in your wedding itself, and have your wedding under the stars. So there's that custom. Again, these are just customs. If you didn't do this, or you don't plan on doing this, or it doesn't work out for you, that doesn't mean, oh well, I guess it's not a kosher wedding. These are just customs. We'll talk about what's necessary, and we'll talk about what's customary. But these are just some of the customs. Okay. This next piece is necessary. Is actually a halacha, not just a power of a custom, a little bit stronger than a custom because it has reasons and it has a lot of history. So there's a custom to have a shomer for the Katan and a shomeret for the kala. Now, what is a shomer and shomeret? These are guards or escorts, and that's because when it gets close to the wedding, and as far as I know, most people just do this on the night before the wedding. The night before the wedding, there's because every night before a mitzvah is performed, the Yetzer Hara tries to interfere, tries to make things difficult, problematic, dangerous. So to avoid that, we have and we talked about this, if you recall, when we talked about the Brit Milah, and that the baby needs protection before the Brit Milah, and that's why you invite the neighborhood children to come over to say the Shema Yisrael with the baby. That's called the Vachnacht. That's the Yiddish name for it. And the reason, again, is to create a reason to protect the child, since the child cannot say Shema himself. So too, the Chatan and Kala need extra protection, so they get a guard, they get an escort, so that they don't do anything stupid, so that they don't do anything dangerous. It's a very ancient, nice custom, and they are supposed to not sleep alone in the room. They're supposed to sleep in the same room as the escort, and that's what most people do. Now, some people, there is an older custom which I've never seen in action, but there's an older custom that the groom is actually escorted all the way from the time of the Ufruf, from the time of the Shabbat before the wedding. So already several days before, perhaps, or almost a week before, do we talk about the Ufruf in the last class? No, we should probably talk about that. No, we did. I'm pretty sure we did. Ufruf is the Shabbat before a wedding, and there aren't too many customs about that, besides that the groom gets an aliyah and usually gets candy thrown at him. I think we talked about the candy and how it used to be rice or wheat, and now it's mostly candy, and it's not about hurting the person. Right. But we talked about it in the bar. I remember now. I think
the bar mitzvah.
The bar mitzvah, yes. We talked about the ufruf during the bar mitzvah. That's where things are a little confusing. So the ufruf is a custom. It's it's specifically Ashkenazic custom, and And it basically involves the groom getting an aliyah, doing mitzvot to get to the actual merits to be able to fulfill this greatest of mitzvot, the first mitzvah in the Torah of pru'urvu, that he's about to be engaged in. And he usually gets the maftir aliyah, so he reads the haftarah. That's an ancient custom as well. And like that. So so how long the groom is escorted can be different. There are different customs about this. There's even a custom that the bride and groom have an escort until the end of the Sheva Brachot, which we haven't even talked about yet. But so obviously that doesn't mean that they don't sleep alone. Obviously they sleep alone in the room. The escort doesn't bother them there. But aside from that, wherever they go, they're escorted by another person, by the groom's shomer. Okay. Part of okay, so now let's talk about the chuppah.
Rabbi, can I interrupt for a minute, please?
Sure.
Is it only a custom that you keep the Katan and Kala apart for a week before the wedding?
No, there's
That they don't see each other a week before?
yes,
wedding?
that's more than a custom. That has quite a bit of force to it. There's only a few exceptions. There are exceptions, but in general, yeah, we don't have the Katan and Kala see each other for the week, and part of the reason is pretty obvious. Right? We don't want them to mess around. The thing is, human nature is such that the closer the people come to the actual fulfillment of a mitzvah, the Yetzer Hara inside us tries to ruin that mitzvah, right? Especially a mitzvah that's dragged out like a wedding generally is. You don't get married like the week after you got engaged, right? It's going to be a month, 2 months, 3 months afterwards, usually 3 months or more, quite honestly. But the closer you get to that point, the more there's going to be a Yetzer Hara to say, oh, we're basically married. Why don't we just act like we're married now? So that sort of inclination isn't people, and that's part of the reason why, as we're going to discuss, why the Nisuyin and the Kedushin and the Chuppa were all smushed into one day, as opposed to how it used to be when people like basically were legally married for quite a bit of time before they actually became spiritually married under the chuppah. Good point. Yes, but there are exceptions. I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we're an exception in a lot of ways. One of the ways is that the week before the marriage, I needed to buy myself a new hat, right? A nice hat, but I wanted it to be a hat that she liked, and we didn't have the technology then to take a picture of it and send it in to send it in a computer that or anything like that. So she had to actually see the hat. So we together with my shomer, we went to whatever it was, somewhere in New York, to the hat store. So even though that was within the week of the wedding. So there are exceptions to that, but ideally, yes, they should not see each other until the chuppah, really, which includes, by the way, a lot of people make this mistake. This is a common mistake. I've seen this tons of times. They don't see each other all week long, and then on the day of the wedding, before the chuppah, during the pictures, they see each other. What's that all about? You're not supposed to see each other until the chuppah. That's not 5 minutes before the chuppah, not 2 hours before the chuppah. until the chuppah, 7 whole days before the chuppah. And then the chuppah happens, and then you can take the pictures. But people want to take pictures before, and it takes a long time. And you want to take a picture with this baby and that baby, that uncle, that aunt. Oh, Aunt Hilda from Texas is here. Let's make sure she's into all the pictures now. So you regroup everybody and take pictures all over again. I said I wasn't going to rant about this, but but that's what happens, and then that's the whole wedding. It takes like 3 hours to take all the pictures, and then you're already exhausted. You've seen enough of each other before you even get to the chuppah, so that's not ideal, and that's definitely not the point of the halacha. It's probably the exact opposite of the point of the halacha, so best to avoid that. Anyway, so it is customary to escort the Katan and the Kala to the Chuppa. You've seen this before. Usually they are escorted by their parents, if they have parents. One on the left side, one on the right side. Both parents should be holding a candle. There's a reason for this custom. This is a custom, but there are reasons for this custom. One of the reasons is, you're going to laugh, one of the reasons is because it's a custom to have the wedding at night. So you should probably have somebody holding light while you're walking at night. So that's one of the reasons for the custom. Other reasons have been given for the custom as well. There's 2 candles. A candle in Hebrew is ner, nun, resh. The gematria of nun and resh is 50 plus 200, and that's 250. I did the math for you in my head. You're welcome. 250 plus 250, because there's 2 candles, is 500. You're welcome. And 500 is the same gematria as Pruvu, be fruitful and multiply. So it's one really long, complicated way to say that we're trying to bless this child, this family with much nachas. And one of the reasons to get married is to have families. Of course, not everybody does, but we'll get to that in other life cycle classes. Meanwhile, they are usually escorted by on both sides, like a king and queen would be escorted. People are supposed to get up when they walk into the room, or nearby, if it's outside, as it should be. People are supposed to get up for the groom, and then they're supposed to sit down so that they can get up again for the bride. Otherwise, you're just standing up and you're staying standing, and that's not the point. The point is to stand up, to show kavod, to show respect to the king, which is the Katan is the king for the day. And then you get back, then you sit back down when he takes his place under the chuppah. And then the kala comes out, or eventually there are different customs about who comes out between the Katan and kala. There is, I know, for example, in Bukharian weddings, and I think they get this from the Middle East, I've seen it in some other Middle Eastern cultures, where the entire family comes out before the bride, like sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody comes out, and they all do their own little dance as they're coming out, right? And then they all have their own little music, and it's all very fancy. And then eventually the bride comes out, and again, escorted by her parents, who are holding candles. So far, so good. Okay, next piece of the wedding is everybody puts away the candles. Okay, a lot of people, these little details is where people get mixed up. They're like, we got here, we're holding these candles, should we just keep holding them the rest of the day? Or that would be quite inconvenient, as we're about to see, because especially the mother of the bride is going to have a very important job to do very soon with her hands. It would be a shame if she would drop the candle onto the bride's dress at this point. So get rid of the candles, put them away. You don't need them anymore. Okay, you can put them out somehow, wave at them, or whatever you want to do. Put out the candles and go on with your life, but have a place for them. Be prepared for this. Don't don't walk into a situation where you're painted in the corner. Okay, and now the bride circles the Katan 7 times. Okay, and this is the part where usually the mother of the groom, and sometimes the mother of the bride, and sometimes the mother of the groom also help by lifting the back of the dress if it's a long train, right? and they circle the Katan 7 times. It should be 7, not some other number. It's and there are different symbols, different reasons for this custom. But one is that a king is surrounded by soldiers. And by circling 7 times, you're basically indicating that this is an established thing, much like Jericho was encircled 7 times in the time of Yoshua, when he came to the land, right? Also, the 7 times that Hashem's name is mentioned when we receive the Torah. 7 is also the 7 days of creation. Lots of reasons brought down for why it's 7. The 7 heavens. They're going to be building a home, which is like it's supposed to be a level of Shemayim, right? There's also a custom that you only do this 3 times. Now, I've never seen that, because like I said, I'm out of town, and so we only do things very limited sorts of ways. But there is a custom apparently of the bride going around the Katan 3 times, and there's reasons for that too, obviously. Yeah, so this is a little bit out of order, but just I'm just going to go in order of the book. I don't know why he has this way he does, but that's neither hither nor thither. The custom is for the groom on his wedding day to go to the mikvah. Now, it's also the halacha for the bride, but that's not a custom. That's a halacha. That's straight out halacha. She has to go, and it has to be all, all the halachot of the mikvah have to apply. No, no dirt, nothing on her that she can take off, etc., etc. And all the usual rules, and she has to count all the clean days and everything else, all the same laws of nida as ever, especially, I shouldn't say especially because it's true for any time, but that's really the reason why she goes to the mikvah. The custom is for the Katan to go to the mikvah, though, for the same reasons that Katan goes to the mikvah erev Sukkot, erev Yom Kippur, and that's because it's a kapara. We're trying to. He's supposed to think of himself as being reborn, a brand new person under the chuppah, and to do that, we have to create certain ways to feel that way. So amongst other things, the groom goes to the chuppah, the bride and groom fast on the day of their wedding, unless they can't, which again is another exception. Like for my wife and myself, we got married in Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, and you don't fast on Rosh Chodesh, so good timing. All right, so that's one of the things. You fast. Oh yeah, also the Shmona Esrei that's prayed before the wedding, assuming it's mincha and then the chuppah. So the mincha, the Chatan is supposed to, usually the custom is for the Chatan to lead services wherever they are, wherever the minyan is, and for the Chatan to sort of extend his prayers a little bit, because he's going to say the vidui of erev Yom Kippur. So he davens the mincha of erev Yom Kippur right before his chuppah. That's the classic Ashkenazic custom for that. Questions about that so far? Okay, I like it. Nobody has any questions. It's all clear. Good. As we said before, there is a certain decorum and respect that we're supposed to show the Chatan and Kala by getting up for them, etc., etc. It's also included in how you dress for the wedding. The point of being dressed for the wedding is not to show off. It's not to look prettier than the Chatan or the Kala. The point of dressing up for the wedding is to give them honor, because they are a king and queen. How would you dress in front of a king and queen? I'm not talking about, I'm not going to get into politics, how much you respect or disrespect the current administration. That's not the point. A king and queen, imagine the king and queen, this royal thing, this the procession and this, that. I remember reading a story once that there's a story about Rav Belsky. He was supposed to go to a meeting in Manhattan for he was when he was younger, he was in charge of a camp. I forget the name of the camp all of a sudden. I just blanked, but whatever. It was one of the summer camps, and so he was in charge, and so he had to go to a meeting. And on his way to the meeting, he got out of the subway station, and he saw that there was a parade, like the queen of some other country had just arrived, and there was huge gallant parade, music, confetti, lights, colors, dancing, everything. So he says, wow, he was amazed by it, and obviously he couldn't get to the meeting on time because of all the added traffic. When he got to the meeting, he realized he wasn't really late because everybody else was kept up in the traffic too. But he learned a great lesson there, that this is how much respect you're supposed to show a visiting queen from another country. This is how they're supposed to be treated. This is how you're supposed to treat the greats in our generation. He said, by the way, he also said that this didn't compare to his Rosh Yeshiva. His Rosh Yeshiva at the time, Rav Reuven Gorzovsky, was sick, just had a stroke, which would eventually take his life. But for a few more months, he was still alive. He was basically being carried on a chair. And when he was being carried on a chair, Rav Belsky says the awe that people felt, basically it felt like they were in the presence of an angel. A real malach was there. It didn't compare. All the parade and tapestry and everything else of the queen didn't compare at all to the respect and the awe that they felt when they were carrying Rav Grozovsky on a chair. So anyway, that's the kind of respect we're supposed to have for a Katan and Kala. And when I say that, by the way, I want to make it very clear: a Katan and Kala. Right? A lot of people think, from what I've seen, a lot of people think that this is the respect that's due to a Katan. So for the whole year, the Katan is treated differently. Like he's not supposed to help set up. He's not supposed to clean. Obviously, in his own house, he's obviously going to have to help. But like if he's like a guest at somebody's house, he shouldn't help. He shouldn't be moving chairs around. He shouldn't be schlepping things in the shul. He shouldn't be your messenger for anything. He should have that kind of respect. I've seen a lot of people do that. I have not seen the same amount of respect being directed at the Kala, which is unfortunate because it's wrong. The Kala also needs to have the exact same kind of respect. When she comes in, you should also ask her, are you thirsty? Can I get you anything? Can you sit down, please? The same exact thing that you would do for a Katan for the first year that he's married, you should do for a Kala as well. And that's for the whole first year, by the way. And I've heard it said, at least my Rebbeim used to teach me, that the reason that the Chatan is treated this way during that year, is that he will learn how to treat his wife for the rest of his life. So the respect that he is shown during that year, he's supposed to learn from that respect how to respect his wife for the rest of his life. There's a custom for the parents to give a bracha to the Chatan and Kala. By the way, both parents. I've often seen it that the father of the bride gives the blessing. It's actually the bride's mother should also give her a blessing. If it's not the exact same words, just whatever is in her heart, is very important. The Chatan should also get a blessing from his father, from his mother, right? All of that is because remember, what are we doing? We're passing on the torch, right? The next generation is taking over, right? You're not mom and dad anymore. I mean, obviously you're still mom and dad forever, but you're not the only mom and dad. Now these two people are going to be mom and dad too. That baton is being passed down, and it needs to be done with love and care. So the custom for the Katan to be blessed with being like Ephraim and Menashe, just like he is, just like a father blesses his son every Shabbat. And the Kala should be blessed by her father with another blessing. A lot of people don't do this, but it's the same, basically the same blessing. Part of it should be the same blessing that that Lavan gave to Rivka when she left the house. That her number should be in the thousands of tens of thousands. That doesn't mean she should have a football team for a family. It means that that she should have many merits and a good sized family. There is a mitzvah not related to covet, a separate mitzvah to gladden a chatan and kala. They're supposed to be made happy. That's the only reason you're going to a wedding, by the way, is to make them happy, to make them smile. Once you can get them to smile and be happy at their wedding, you fulfill your obligation. Now, keep in mind, even without you, most likely they'll be happy. They're not having the wedding for you. They're having the wedding because they obviously love this person, whoever it is, and they want to be with this person for the rest of their life, and they're happy that this person accepted them as they love it. This person loves them as, or seems to, as much as they think they love that person. So that's why they're already happy. Happiness should not be a problem at a wedding. All you're doing is you're just you're cranking it up a notch. You're making the event into a party. They could have a private happiness, but as my Rebbe said under the chuppah when my wife and I got married, there's no such thing as a private wedding. There's no such thing. There's laws in Judaism to make sure that a wedding is a public event. A minyan, at least the two witnesses, et cetera. Right. So why is that? Because a wedding isn't just an event between two people, as we said last week. Right. The wedding is an extension of the Jewish people. That's why the minyan doesn't say tachanan when the chatan comes in. Right. It's a simcha for all of us. We as a Jewish people are growing. It's a wonderful thing. It's a simcha for everybody, and so therefore, it's never a private event. Interestingly enough, in the Gemara in Brachot 6b and in Ketuvot 16b, there's all kinds of examples of what the rabbis would used to do to pump up the party, right? To make it into an event. They would juggle, and they would decorate, and they would play around with sticks and dance and all kinds of stuff. At the part of the wedding is an event that we nowadays call a bedekin, at least in Yiddish. And at the bedekin, it's an ancient custom that the chatan puts the veil onto the bride. That's the main part of the bedekin. And the reason for that is because the ancient story in the Torah of how Lavan tricked Yaakov into marrying Leah instead of Rachel is that he veiled her, and then although Yaakov thought it was Rachel, it turned out to be Leah. So to avoid that, the groom himself is putting down the veil. Now, at that moment, the custom is, first of all, in most places, the custom is first to write all the legal documents in the what's often called in Ashkenazic circles the Chatan's Tish, right? That's not just about singing and drinking. And so the main part of the Tish is the signing of the ketubah and all the things he's promising to do during the wedding. By the way, in many communities nowadays, the bride also has to sign it, or at least be shown it, and and it needs to be explained to her. It's a legal document that she's accepting. She should know what she should know what's in it, right? That is an important part of the wedding, and God willing, something we'll talk about in the next class in more detail. But meanwhile, after the signing of these documents, and usually after the breaking of the plate, right? You might have heard of this custom. It's an Ashkenazi custom where the mother of the groom and the mother of the bride take a plate, and together they break it. It's supposed to symbolize that they have no hard feelings against each other, that they don't plan on fighting, that they have that they're not that there should be shalom bayit in the house. And I think we talked about at the end of last week's class, it might have been after the class, we talked about how there's people who have a custom to put this plate under the pillow, or somebody, right? We talked about this, yeah. There's no such custom. It does not exist. This is not a magic plate or anything like that. And so therefore it has no significance. It doesn't have to be kept or anything like that. Now, one thing I should say, this is not really halacha, but just as practical, make sure you're not using the hotel's silverware, the hotel's china. Why? Because hotel china isn't made the same way that the normal people's china is made. Hotel china is almost unbreakable. So what you'll end up having is these two ladies are going to be like banging this plate against anything they can to try to break it, and it just won't break. It's just it's a well-made plate. So I've seen this happen. If I'm not mistaken, it happened at my wedding. They didn't know what to do. Eventually, I think somebody brought a hammer and they're just trying to knock at it and trying to break this plate. It becomes kind of a comic event at some point. But that's the custom. And of course, after all the signing and after the breaking of the plate, the Katan is danced over to the Kala, where her father gives her a blessing. Usually, the Katan gives her a blessing. She can give him a blessing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's usually what she's doing, by the way, at the Bedekin most of the time anyway, is she's giving out blessings to people before this happens, before he comes over to. It can happen after also, by the way. It's never too late for the Kala to give blessings. The whole week of Sheva Brachot, she's like a queen, and a queen's requests are answered. So it's not just under the chuppah, it's not just at the bedekin. She can give blessings all the time. You don't have to, bother her too much. You see somebody's overburdened by too many people giving out blessings. It might be a better blessing for you not to bother her. You know what I'm saying? And whatever your request is will be answered mina shamayim without the use of the bride's powerful prayers. Okay. I will stop the recording and stop the live feed to Facebook and see if there are any questions. And I want to remind everybody that Wednesday night is the Parsha class on Bishalach.